Welcome to the Planning Instruction for Content Literacy mini-lecture. The organizing principle for this chapter centers around why planning is important for successful literacy teaching. The organizing principle for Chapter 5 is instructional planning brings students and text together in ways that support content literacy and learning. Without a good plan in the classroom, you, as a teacher, not only lose precious instructional time, but you also sacrifice three important things: student engagement, motivation, and learning, all of which can be difficult to get back once they're gone. RTI stands for Response to Intervention. RTI is a way to meet the needs of all learners, which is a difficult task for any teacher. Teachers must find a way to scaffold learning so that all students are supported. How to do this? First, offer flexible grouping opportunities so that students can work with others of differing abilities. Second, include accommodations in your classroom. You can do this by modifying tasks to match the abilities of students, shorten reports, allow students to word process rather than handwrite assignments or notes, require fewer resources, and so on. One note: in Indiana, RTI stands for Response to Instruction. What is the key to content literacy and learning? The key is thinking. Yes, it's the thinking that goes into planning instructional frameworks, that is, lessons and units. If you do this, it will support students thinking about content and learning with text. Planning lessons and units of study results in engaged learning, teaching exactly what students need to learn, and incorporating strategies and activities that facilitate learning. There are two dimensions or components of content literacy: explicit instruction, which is the direct instruction in the development of skills and strategies that enable students to understand what they are reading. The second component is functional instruction, teaching with a variety of instructional activities and strategies that actively engage students in learning content. Explicit strategy instruction happens when teachers overtly and clearly teach procedures, that is, the step-by-step instructions, the how-to-do-it instructions. The primary responsibility for explicit strategy instruction often falls on language arts English teachers to teach literacy, but make no mistake about it, all classroom teachers have a responsibility to show students, especially struggling learners, how to learn with discipline-specific text: math, science, health, and social studies. The second kind of instruction is functional instruction. It emphasizes applying the strategies needed to learn from a variety of print and digital sources. This kind of instruction helps teachers integrate literacy and learning in a seamless fashion. You will find that students are always actively engaged in carefully planned strategies and activities that help them learn the content. There are three levels of knowledge needed for both teachers and students: declarative knowledge, where both teachers and students must understand a strategy and the skills it is meant to support; procedural knowledge, which is teachers and students' ability to carry out strategies. This requires explicit instruction. The last level is conditional knowledge, the ability to determine and select strategies that are most appropriate and effective for the content and task at hand. It requires careful planning and knowledge of students' characteristics, like how certain students learn best, who are not strong readers, who needs more vocabulary knowledge, and so on. Teachers have a significant role to play: scaffolding. Scaffolding is giving students the support they need to be successful at whatever task teachers give them. Instructional scaffolding allows teachers to support students' efforts to make sense of text, show students how to use strategies that will lead over time to independent learning. Gaps often exist for struggling readers. Gaps can be caused by lack of prior knowledge of the content, students' interest, attitudes toward the content, the student's cultural background, language proficiency, and reading ability. There are four components of explicit strategy instruction: awareness and explanation, modeling and demonstration, guided practice, and application. To better illustrate explicit strategy instruction, let's use an analogy: sports. Explicit strategy instruction uses the same strategies needed by athletes who are in training as students. Athletes must understand the rules, work on technique, and practice, practice, practice. A coach, just like a teacher, is needed to provide that athlete with feedback, to guide, to inspire, and to share the coach's knowledge and experience with the sport. To help students become aware of a particular strategy and to explain it to them, First, conduct an informal assessment of students' ability to use a particular strategy. This informal assessment should be a real-life, authentic assessment, also known as the formative assessment. This assessment is not graded, but is a tryout for the new strategy and should not be seen as a test of ability to use the strategy. The steps to assess strategy knowledge are: assign students a text passage of 500 to 1,000 words. Takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Direct students to use a particular strategy. Observe the use of the strategy. Ask students to respond in writing to several key questions about the use of the strategy. Finally, discuss what happened, why the strategy is useful. Explain rules of the strategy. Have students practice the strategy. The next part of learning a new strategy is to demonstrate and model how to use the strategy. Teachers always have follow-up sessions on learning how to use the strategy after the informal assessment has been given and the results examined. Some visual ways to review the steps is to use a smartboard, PowerPoint presentations, charts, or overhead transparencies. Demonstrate the strategy so that students see it from the beginning to end. Initiate a Think Aloud procedure to model how to use the strategy. A Think Aloud has the teacher stopping at key points in the text to ask questions or provide oral prompts. This shows students the critical thinking required to apply the strategy. After reading this, I am thinking that, and, I know blank, so I should blank next. Guided practice is when a strategy is applied. In guided practice, first the teacher will have trial runs of the strategy with short selections from the textbook, tradebook, or other text. Next, debrief students with questions after each practice. Guided practice helps students to learn to assess themselves by giving a short quiz to show them how much they have learned and remembered because they used the strategy, and keeping a learning log of what has been learned. Now that the teacher has given the assessment, has modeled and given instruction on the strategy, and as a guided practice, teachers teach application of the strategy. The last step is to design assignments so that students must apply the strategy just learned and practice with the teacher. Doing this allows students more exposure to the content, strengthens understanding of both the strategy and the content, always a good thing, and leads to the student's ability to apply the strategy independently. Being able to choose which strategy would work best with certain materials is indeed a high level of critical thinking. Why are we studying how to carefully think about and plan lessons? Students respond well to structure, student engagement is increased, motivation to learn is heightened, and learning is enhanced. Lesson plan formats vary from district to district, but all comprehensive lesson plans include the standards, instructional goals or objectives, essential questions, instructional strategies and activities, instructional materials and resources, new literacies, and assessment. Your ISU lesson plan often has an additional component, reflection. You are asked to think about at least 3 things, sometimes more. What went well, what didn't go so well, and what will you do differently if you teach this lesson in the future. Lesson plans include clearly defined frameworks. One of the most common is the BDA framework. BDA stands for Before Reading, During Reading, and After Reading Activities. The 50 Literacy Strategies Step-by-Step book has many BDA strategies that will help you teach content. Before reading activities are also known as pre-reading. This phase of instruction will establish the purpose of a lesson, will activate prior knowledge, will sustain motivation, and provide direction on how to proceed. Before reading strategies help students make connections to previous lessons, review previous lessons, and present key vocabulary to help students be successful in class. During reading activities, guide an active search for meaning. Active searches for meaning help students to distinguish important from less important ideas. You've probably seen students highlighting everything in a text and maybe seen them even using a rainbow of highlighter colors. This may indicate that the student hasn't been able to pick out the important or key ideas to perceive relationships. It may also be a sign that the content isn't well understood and the student doesn't recognize the big picture. During reading activities help students to respond actively to meaning. It bridges the gap between students and text and is especially needed in content areas like mathematics that have highly specialized vocabulary and technical language. After reading activities, enlarge and extend ideas from the text, clarify ideas, extend students' thinking, further refines new concepts, and includes such strategies as writing activities and study guides after the content is learned. The Vaca, and Moratz textbook has examples of BDA activities. There is a social studies after reading activity found in figure 5.4. A physical education class lessons with BDA activities can be seen in figure 5.5, and a French class BDA activity is presented in figure 5.6. Check these out to read real-life teaching examples. Planning units of study helps teachers to organize instructional activities around inquiry projects and multiple texts. Units often use inquiry-based learning projects, which require learning that is based on research questions, scenarios, or problems. Units of study give teachers much more latitude to coordinate resource materials and activities. They can be organized around different groups, small groups, whole class, or individuals. In planning a unit, it is important to remember the components of a well-designed unit: content, objectives, instructional activities, and text resources, how to incorporate an inquiry research emphasis in your units of study, and how to integrate multiple texts in units of study. A powerful strategy to promote active student engagement is planning collaborative learning. Collaborative learning is learning through collaboration in classroom instructional activities. It is considered a scientifically supported comprehension strategy. Goals of collaborative learning include fostering collaboration in the classroom, developing student self-esteem while learning, encouraging development of positive group relationships, enhancing academic achievement, and facilitating active participation. Here are 4 cooperative learning strategies. Jigsaw groups, which are heterogeneous groups of 3 to 6 students, where each member specializes in one subtopic task and teaches it to the other team members. Student Teams Achievement Divisions is another cooperative learning strategy where 4-member heterogeneous groups study a topic with the goal of helping each other master content. Learning circles involve whole group study with small group discussion and activities. Group investigation teams select a topic and cooperatively plan the inquiry process. In learning how to handle small group processes during collaborative learning, the teacher must scaffold instruction on the following attributes of small groups. Size. Groups should be just large enough to solve the problem or complete the task. Composition. Use both hetero and homogeneous grouping of students for the best collaboration. The teacher must know students' capacities to make the best functioning groups. Goals. Must be clear to students, be directly related to the task, and clearly understood by all members. Performance criteria. The teacher must explain the criteria for performing a task. Team building. Provide practice through exercises that promote cooperation between team members. Group roles and division of labor. Clearly define each group member's role. Is there a discussion leader, a recorder, an investigator, etc.? Parts of learning to plan effective units of study and lesson is planning discussions. Discussions allow students to respond to text, build concepts, clarify meaning, explore issues, share perspectives, and refine thinking. All these promote good comprehension and build strong literacy skills. How do you create an environment for effective discussion? Arrange the classroom to facilitate discussion. Can students see each other? Encourage listening. Teachers who talk less encourage students to talk more. Establish a goal for discussion. State the objective for talking about a topic. Why are the students supposed to be discussing something? Focus the discussion. This prevents the students and teacher from straying from the main topic. Avoid squelching discussion. Give students time to think before calling on them. A wait time to reflect on possible answer helps slower thinkers. What is the final thought on planning instruction? An effective content classroom organizes itself around well-planned text lessons and units of study, thrives on collaborative interactions between teacher and students, and among students and other students. It is grounded in the principles of small group processes, cooperative learning, and discussion.